Well, hello and welcome to episode 2 of BusinessPRO TV. I'm Alex Glassey. I'm your host, and this is episode 2. A little housekeeping note before we get going is this episode will be divided into 2 pieces because our host forgot to press the record button yesterday during the live session of this until halfway through. So you got about half an hour here that's recorded the following morning, the first day of spring. And then we'll get you onto the other half in about 30 minutes. So, yeah, and it is the first day of spring, and I'd like to share something with you. Let's go over to here. Oops. Go over to here. This is a picture that, not mine, unfortunately, that was taken on the grounds of Royal Roads University in Victoria, Canada. They have a fantastic site on a hill that leads right down into the ocean. Overlooking the mountains of Washington State. The United States is just across the water. And they have a bunch of gardens. And here's the Japanese gardens out in the back in the autumn. This is not my picture. I wish I'd taken this. It's absolutely stunning. So welcome to autumn. And while we're sitting here with this picture on the screen, I also wanted to just take a minute and, take a breath and pat yourself on the back, congratulate yourself for taking this time to invest in yourself, in your business, and in your family's future. So just a bit of time to thank yourself. We so often as business owners, we rush around like crazy doing all manner of things and never really stopping and pausing to be grateful for the things that we're doing. So way to go. Welcome back. Let's get launched into it. We have an absolutely chock-a-block day today. Okay, let's get into the next slide. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube live, this actually goes live. These episodes go live on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons at 5 p.m. Pacific, and they're going to be going live on those 2 days up until December 16th. So rather than watching it recorded, if you can, I invite you to come into f2f.live/AlexG, that URL that's right there. Come live, because not only can you chat and comment live and we'll see it, but you can also, at the end, you can also come on live with your mic and camera, and we can be talking face to face. You can be asking questions, you can be getting clarification, or you can just be telling us stories about your own business and your own country. And that would be awesome for us all to hear. So come in live Tuesdays and Thursdays afternoons at 5 o'clock. So what we did in the first lesson, we talked about how a small business owner, an entrepreneur, has this bundle of creativity, and it's their job to take that creativity and create an engine that creates cash in a sustainable way, because that cash is then used to create the space and the time and give the resources back to the business owner so that they can continue to be creative, and not just creative in the way that caused them to start the business, whether they were a plumber or a bookkeeper or an artist or whatever. You need to be creative to be able to do those things, but because the very act of being a business owner requires creativity, because there's always issues and problems and opportunities coming along, and we need to have that space and time to be able to, lace our hands behind our head on a Saturday morning, have ourselves a cup of coffee, and think through creatively how we're going to best address the situations that's in front of us, right? The other thing that this graphic is trying to illustrate is that there's a separation. Even though we may be a sole practitioner, or we're bound up personally in our business. This is our business. But what we need to do is we need to separate the us personally from the thing of the business. We need to understand that we need to be able to work on the business. We need to be able to separate ourselves so that we can actually look at the business more dispassionately, if that's possible, or to the extent that that's possible, and be able to make the decisions, easy or hard, in order to make that business sustainable and able to perform for us and our staff and our families. Does that make sense? We also looked at this graph, which is just a way, it's a bunch of numbers that are averaged together to say that as businesses get older from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that their profitability increases, and that somewhere along the line on this chart, the average, that it's in that 4th year that profitability really jumps up from 2% profitability, percent of revenue, up to 8% or 10%. In other words, after 2 or 3 years, we really figure things out. We figure out who our customers are. We figure out what products they want. We figure out how to price things. We figure out how to produce things efficiently enough. And in that 4th year is where we start to get the gain. So those of us who are still standing at the end of that 3rd year have a real bright future to look forward to. So what we're trying to do here in this course is what we're trying to do is we're trying to make that curve shrink so that you will learn the things, even as a startup, you will learn how to think better about your business, and so that you don't have to wait until your 4th year before you're actually doing really well. Let's get that down to the 3rd year or the 2nd year, anyway, whatever, let's compress that. So that was that chart. We also then talked about definitions of a business owner, and a lot of words were thrown out, and at the very top was risk taker, which I said at the time, listen, I don't think that we really want to be risk takers. We want to have the tools and the analytical frameworks that allow us to assess and judge things so that when we actually do go forward and invest our time and our money in either a new business or in expanding or working with our existing business, that we're actually not risk takers. We'll reduce the risk taking. And after I'd said that, I found an article online called, it's written by Malcolm Gladwell back in 2010, called The Sure Thing. And he says, listen, entrepreneurs shouldn't be risk takers at all. And so I'm going to, I'll send you that link at the end of this episode so that you can read the article. It's a bit long, but it's an awesome article for all of us to read and be reminded about the fact that risk taking really shouldn't be a part of what we're doing. Okay, and a word about this technology. We're using face-to-face broadcasting, which is the single best technology that I've ever used to communicate with other people online. And there were a couple of issues that surfaced in the first episode, and people were letting us know about a little bit of sync issues and a little bit of pixelation, and we appreciate the feedback. Also, there's a major release coming out in the next couple of days before September 26th or 25th, and it will address all of that stuff and more. So if you have a need to use technology to communicate with other people, whether it be just meetings, whether you're teaching like I'm doing right now, whether you're doing a webinar, whether you're doing any kind of live stream, you can use face-to-face to do that with up to 1 million people online. And every single one of those people is going to have no lag. They're all going to be using it in their browser, so there's no downloads. Completely interactive, as you'll see. You know, we have people coming and going in this in these episodes, and the whole thing is completely free. So give face-to-face a try. f2f.live. All right, episode 2, lifting your sights, the power of aspiration, values, and authenticity. So what we're doing here is, in this session, is we are going to move from start the transition of working in the business, you know, where we're busy plumbing, or we're busy bookkeeping, or we're busy writing software, or we're busy, you know, doing marketing stuff for our clients, working in the business, and we're going to lift our chins, lift our sights, and we are going to come from the engine room, if you will, a ship's engineer. We're going to get out of the muck, and we're going to climb onto the bridge of our ship for some fresh air and a chance to get the big picture, because that's really what working on the business is, the start of it, right? We really need to have that sense of being able to look around, have the time and the vision to be able to see things a little further. Okay, so that's what today is all about, is to just break that sense of working in the business and now start to move on working on the business. But first of all, what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back through all of the results, the information that you shared with me in the survey that I released after the first episode. There's just some great stuff there. So let's go through some of those results right now. First question was, are you satisfied with your current monthly sales? And by far, people said no, they're just not satisfied with the current monthly sales. A few people didn't know what their monthly sales were, and there were a couple of people who were satisfied with it, but clearly not satisfied. Are you satisfied with your current gross margin? So what I've done is I've shown the sales numbers there still in orange, and then I'm putting the gross margins in purple. And again, more people satisfied with gross margin. However, also more people that don't know what their gross margin is, or even what a gross margin is. And that's, again, we'll learn that in the next few episodes. But again, still the preponderance of people are unhappy with their gross margin. They're also unhappy with their sales growth, right? So that's why you're here, right? You're totally unhappy with this thing. But I also want to tell you that these are actually great numbers. They're great. They're awesome. And here's why, for two reasons. First of all, because you had the courage to separate yourself from your business and take a look at your business and say, I'm not happy with that. You're looking at things in a realistic manner, and that's exactly what we need to do. So congratulations, first of all, for having the courage to do that and share it with me. And the second thing is that it's great because now we have a starting point. Now we know where we're at. Sales aren't so good, margins not so good, or sales are good, but margins bad, or whatever the situation is for you, but at least we know. And now we know what we need to improve on, right? Okay, question number 4. Do you have a well-defined focus for the next 3 to 12 months? And just look at this. Virtually no one has a well-defined focus. Again, don't worry about this stuff. Good to know that. And clearly this course is going to start to do that starting today. And the next one was, do you have a roadmap for the next 3 months? And just the same number of people didn't. No one's got a roadmap, which is a step-by-step list of what I'm going to be working on, or what the team is going to be working on for the next 3 months. And that's what well, first of all, you do know what you're going to be doing for the next 3 months, because every Tuesday and Thursday, you're going to be showing up here, and we're going to be walking through these steps together so that by December 16th, I promise you, you're going to have focus, you're going to have a roadmap, and you're going to be working on those things that you're not happy with, so that 2018 is going to be a far different year than what you've experienced so far. So the other thing is that is it any wonder that then 80% of you said that, more than 80% said that you just weren't satisfied with your life overall. Of course you can't be. If you're working hard, long hours, hard in this business, and you've got cash flow pressures, and it's just simply not providing for you and your family and your future in the way that you had hoped, of course it's going to eat away at you. And that's the worst part of this whole thing, right? If it's going well, awesome. If it's not going well, it really sucks. But again, back to business ownership, right? We own that. We own the result if it's awesome. We own the result if it's not awesome. And so for you to have the courage and the commitment to show up here again, pat yourself on the back. Let's keep moving forward. Okay, I think we went there. Oh yeah. How do your customers feel about your business? So nobody said their customers disliked them, right? And so I'm sure you have had customers who dislike you. Listen, my products and services have been used by 150,000 business owners and business advisors around the world. And I will tell you that there are people there, and as much as people like it and love it and everything else, there have been people who just hate the product, hate the service, hate the training, hate whatever, right? And they'll tell me. And in fact, those people are some of my favorite people, because that's where you learn. That's what, now, if you listen to these people, that's where you'll learn, and that's where you can get better. You may have lost them as a customer, but they left behind the service, which is, I hate this because of this. Whenever someone says, I'm leaving, or I hate, or I don't like you anymore, it's a great opportunity to say, hey, why? Go back to them. Treat those people with extra consideration. Then we have people who said, yeah, their customers like them, people who said their customers love them. But look, the biggest single group of people is the people who said they do not know how their customers feel about their business. And this to me is a staggering number, because our customers are the source of revenue and margin and profit, our paycheck. They're the source of the funds that we'll use to take vacations with our family, to put our kids through school, all those types of things, right? Customers are absolutely got to be front and center in our thinking. We absolutely need to know whether they like us or not. And here's why. There's another statistic that I was able to kind of put on top of this one. Looks like this. These people who said their customers liked them, 25% of them said that they had satisfactory gross margins, that they had gross margins that were good, right? So if your customers like you, 25% of you said, yeah, my gross margins are good. Look at the people who said that their customers love them. Of the people who said their customers love them, 50% said that they had gross margins that were great. So what this is saying is that the more customers like you, the better your gross margins are, or the happier you are with your gross margins. Customers that love you lead to better gross margins. And that makes sense, right? If they love you, they see the value in you. And when they see the value in you, then they're no longer going to be squeezing the price down, squeezing their margins, because they're trying to get the price that they're paying down in equilibrium with the value that they feel that they're going to be receiving. Does that make sense, right? And of course, as you go down the list, you get to customers who dislike you, and of course, they're not giving you any margin because they've left. So it makes sense that as you get your customers to like you more and more and more, and we're going to talk about this for the next 10 episodes. We're going to talk about this. This is fundamental. Okay. So customers that love you lead to better gross margins, but I also would say that better gross margins lead to customers that love you, right? If you're making more money from your products, what that allows you to do, or your services, what that allows you to do is to spend the time to make your products even better, to create extensions to your products and services, to add new products and services that your customers will appreciate even more, right? So this is an absolutely virtuous circle. Customers that love you lead to better gross margins. Better gross margins then lead to customers that love you, right? And the corollary is also true, right? Customers that hate you lead to worse gross margins, and worse gross margins lead to customers that hate you because you can't afford to dig yourself out. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, now we're into it. The peril of traditional business thinking. One of the reasons that we find ourselves with graphs that look like that, where we're not happy with revenue or gross margins, or our customers don't like us, is because we've all tried to follow traditional business thinking. And what that does is it puts us into what I call a transaction box that squeezes the life out of our business. And by the way, for those of you who want to, I'm going to take you through this process, but all this is laid out really, really well in a book that I released last year called Customer Dreams. It tells a story of a couple of businesses and shows them going into this trouble area, but then also shows them how to get out. And there's 3 appendices there, which I'm going to draw on today, that give you 10 and 10, a list of 10 things that show you the bad things, and then how to get out, and then the benefits that accrue when getting out. So let's go through that. The transaction box squeezes the creativity, the profitability, and the success out of your business. And it starts here. We are told by all business schools that the source of revenue and goodness, as I just said, is our customer. And so what we do is we take a look at our customer and we listen to what they want, and then we try our best to deliver what they want. But our customers have also gone to the same business schools and read the same business books. And so what they're doing is they're looking forward to their customer, to their source of revenue, to their aspirations. They're really not looking back at us, are they? When they do look back at us, what they see is a supplier. So they're looking forward to their customers, they see revenue, and they're looking back to us and they see a supplier. And that sets up the conflict, the fundamental conflict that's at the heart of our relationship with our customer. And that is this, that our profit goes up when their profit goes down, and vice versa. Their profit goes up when our profit goes down, right? You feel that conflict? It's a zero-sum game. There's only $1, and they're either going to spend it with us or they're not going to spend it with us. Or they're going to try to squeeze that dollar that they need to spend from $1 down to 90 cents, 80 cents, 50 cents, right? So what happens? We're at this state of fundamental conflict when the customer looks back at us and sees a supplier, but the customer has control of the cash. They are in charge of the buying transaction. And so what they do is they set up competition, either explicitly or implicitly. They explicitly set up competition when they put out requests for proposals or bids, for example. They say, hey, this is what we want. And they tell 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 different suppliers to bid on the particular job. And again, only one of them will get the job. And what that does is they try to treat us all the same. They try to take all the variables out of the process, and so that the only variable left is the price. And when the only difference between us and our competitors is the price, then we start to compete on price. And that's what a customer wants. They want the price to go down, right? As we continue this, though, here's what happens, is that because those suppliers, our competitors, are so important to our customer, they become critically important to us. And so what we do is we start to look more and more at our supplier, at our competitors, and we start to go, oh, well, they've got a feature, we better put that feature in. Or they don't have that feature, maybe we don't need that feature. And their price is here, we can't go over that price. We know that, because as soon as we go over that price, then we're going to lose the particular deal, right? And so over the course of time, we end up looking more and more like our suppliers. And what we also do is we have taken our eye completely off of our customer. We've taken our eye completely off of our customer, and we are now in a transaction box, which is characterized by a repeated short-term focus on the sales process, on only the transaction. We just need to win the next sale, right? And I'm sure you feel that. Now that's explicitly. Implicitly, we may have, what we do is we feel implicitly, we look around the neighborhood and we go, well, I'm not the only accountant. I'm not the only flower store. I'm not the only one who sells that kind of software, whether it be in the city or around the world now with the advent of the internet. And so this stuff gets into our own head, and we become blinkered. We put these blinders on, and we tend to look at our competition for clues as to what we should be delivering into the world, and we take our eye completely off of the customers, right? Death. And here are 10 things. Here are 6 things out of a list of 10. Here are 6 things that characterize this transaction box. First is commoditization, as we already talked about, right? We're going to look like everybody else, and when that happens, you're just a commodity. You're no different from anybody else. Price pressure. As soon as you're commoditized, the only thing different between you and the alternatives is price, and so you start to feel the downward price pressure. And it's incredibly powerful, this downward price pressure. Our impacted offerings, right? If our price is going down, our margin is shrinking. If our margin is shrinking, we have less money to be able to do things like create additional features and functions and all that extra value that we want to put into our products and services. We can't do it. So our offering becomes impacted, as we talked about. And it, again, looks like our competitors or worse. There's no ability for us to put a cherry on top. Even though we're taught that in business school, hey, you always want to go above and beyond, and right, in order to maintain this customer relationship. There's no possible way that you can do that, because the world of business just squeezes our ability to pay for those cherries right out. Short-term thinking, we now are into, we forget about this medium-term and long-term thinking. We're only looking at the next transaction. And as we've already seen, we've totally forgotten a particular customer, right? It's an awful place to be. So this is this traditional thinking leads us straight into the transaction box, and it actually leaves us exactly where you guys told us we collectively are as a group. Where this exactly represents where we go, right? Dissatisfied with the main financial indicators. There's good news here. The good news is that as the business owner, we have the power to make decisions, and we have the power to design the business we want. Now, I'll tell you a little story. So back in probably the 80s, in the automotive sector, you'll remember that the Japanese automotive companies were starting to get very, very, very good at what they did. And their quality and that type of thing was starting to outpace the quality of the American car companies. And so there was a group of American automotive executives that flew to Japan to have a tour of a Japanese factory. And so they're going through the whole factory, and at the end, the last stage of the factory in Japan, which was same with the last stage of factories in the United States, is where they hang the doors on the car. And so in the Japanese factory, they took the door, hung it on the car, closed the door, and that was it. And the U.S. executives said, hang on for a sec. In the United States, what we do is we hang the door, but then we have someone that with a rubber mallet, and they go and they just tap on the door, just make sure that it's properly settled into the hinges and properly flush with the outside of the car. So where do you do that? And the Japanese guide said, well, we do that in design phase. In other words, the Japanese companies at the time were designing their cars so that they knew that when that door was hung on, it would be perfect without anyone having to go and bang around it with mallets. So they had then saved the process of having to go around and do this extra testing, but also the cost of the mallet itself. But then, if something was wrong, the U.S. automotive companies would have to take that car off and go fix it, whereas the Japanese had designed that fix out of the process. Okay, much more economic way of doing things. Right? So that's what we have the power to do here. We have the power to create that car, our product, our service, our company, any way we want. And that's what we're going to talk about keeping on going, right? So again, just a reminder, our job is to take that creativity and apply it to our business. So we're going to do that in a couple of different ways. The first is, I just want to take you through three little kind of rules. And then we're going to take those rules and we're going to put them all together. So the first is that not everybody's your customer, or everybody's not your customer. And they're certainly not your best customer. All the people that are out there are arranged in a standard bell curve where you have people over here that are never going to be your customer. They don't need what you want, or they don't want to have what you want. Small business owners oftentimes don't really like having an accountant, but they have to have an accountant for income tax purposes, right? And then you get people who grudgingly use your stuff, and then people who like you, and then down at the tailing tip of the bell curve, you've got those customers who absolutely love you. But we need to understand that everybody's not your customer. Number two, 74.1% of us are sole practitioners, and most of the rest of us have less than 10 staff. So why I'm telling you this is because that we have an enormous influence in our company. If we're happy, then our company is happy. If we're doing what we love and we're happy, then everyone in the organization is going to be that much better. And so wouldn't it be awesome if we could be doing what we love? Number three, being good at something is very satisfying. Never mind, that we love it, but just being good at something is very satisfying. And if you take all these three things together, what we end up with, and you try to overlap them, you try to go, okay, wouldn't it be awesome if I could be doing what I love in my company, that me and the company were really good at doing that, so much so that we were able to attract customers that absolutely loved and valued what we did. If we did that, if we were able to play in this magical place right here, that would be awesome. Our gross margins would go up. We would continue to be able to do the things that we love. We would continue to be able to be good at it and get better at it, right? And the reason I'm saying this is just that this is what we want to do. Is we're trying to, we can't just do what we love without customers. We can't just be good at something without customers. You know, we really want to look at these overlapping, these intersections, and we want to find and move towards that. And that's what we want to start to think about in today's lesson, but also in the next 2 or 3 months, but then on an ongoing process. Let's continue to work at driving in toward this area right here. Okay. Simon Sinek, there's a guy called Simon Sinek, and maybe you've heard of him. He's the guy that wrote this book, Start With Why. He's got a great TED Talk. In fact, watch the TED Talk, don't buy the book. I've been reading the book, and the book is the TED Talk just, with some filler blown in to reach a different audience. But he's got a great TED Talk, and I'll share the link with that TED Talk with you. And in the TED Talk, what he says is that people think and act and communicate using these 3, what he calls golden circles. And one of them is why, one of them is how, one of them is what. And what he says is that most people communicate and think from the outside in, right? They think about what they offer or what they're going to do. Then they may think about how, and then oftentimes they don't think about why. Most people don't think about why. And let me give you an example. So let's pick a bookkeeper, and I'm going to pick on bookkeepers a little bit because I know a lot of bookkeepers. I love bookkeepers. I think they're fundamentally important people in the business universe. And anyway, let's pick on a bookkeeper, and let's say the bookkeeper is using traditional thinking and using this outside-in mentality, is trying to communicate what they do to you in this way. So what? We prepare financial statements for business owners. How? Our experience and modern software makes us fast and accurate. So a couple of things are going on here. First of all, starting from the outside in. But second of all, you can see in the how, what they're doing is they're immediately going into this traditional transaction box type thinking where they're immediately comparing themselves to their competitors, right? Well, we've got experience and we use modern software, which makes us fast and accurate as compared to our competitors who may not have the same experience, may not have modern software, and who may be less fast and accurate. So that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to compare themselves, put themselves on a solid standing, but really with regard to some features as they compare to the competitors. So the problems with this are threefold, right? First of all, it's simply not inspiring. And the second thing is that it's very easily copied. Any bookkeeper could say this exact same thing, whether they're accredited bookkeepers or not. Anybody can hold themselves out and say, I'm a bookkeeper and this is what I do. And the third is that clearly this is transaction box thinking and leads us into that bad place. All right, so that's the end of part 1. And go find the other video for part 2, and I'll see you on the other side. And keep doing this. Awesome.